Hello, and welcome to Gondor Calls for Ale, a Middle-earth strategy battle games podcast. I am your host, Sam Gallagher, and with me for this episode is my brother Ben.
Hello, listeners and viewers. Welcome back to the show. This is, of course, episode 62. Sam normally tells us what episode we're on at the beginning of the episode, but he didn't this time, which left me as what's going on? I know it's a Middle-earth strategy battle game podcast, but what episode is it? Numbers are important.
That is true, yes. I don't know about you, Ben, but I'm feeling like episode 62. So we're in a Taylor Swift episode, as always. All right. Well, enough of that and me forgetting how to do the intro and you having to do it for me and me referencing T-Swizzles. I think, Ben, it's time to get into what clearly we've already been getting into, which is, of course, the ale. What are you drinking this fine evening?
Well, Sam, I have myself a Cymbalmern Stout, a beer favoured by the kings of Rohan, for was it not Theoden himself that said, "Ever has this beer foamed in the glasses of my forefathers"?
Very good. Cymbalmern, obviously the white flowers.
Yeah. I looked up what was the flowers called because I knew what I wanted to do for my beer. I looked up what the flowers were called, and I was like, and now I need to look up the video so that I know how to pronounce this.
Very good. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know. So while I'm sipping on this, Sam, what are you having for this episode?
Well, Ben, I'm having a mustering mead, which is half the drink that I'd hoped for.
Yeah. Oh, I made a mistake. Drinking my drink while you're telling me funny drink punchlines.
Very good.
Oh, dear me.
No, dear mead, right. Ben, dear mead.
Well, Sam, do you want to give us a rundown as to what we're talking through this episode while I clear this
Of course. Yeah, so this episode, Ben, we have drug out Nova for as long as possible. That's not quite true. We definitely could get one more episode out of it if we so desired.
That's another episode.
But this is going to be the final Nova episode, I think, and it will be covering the second event we played. This will be covering the doubles. So 3 games, 2 players, 1 outcome, I guess. I don't know where we're going with that. 1 result to rule them all. So yeah, we'll be talking about our journey in the Middle-earth strategy battle games doubles that was held at Nova GT, which I believe was 800 points a side, so 400 a player.
Yeah.
Using the double scenarios out of the match play guide, of course.
And rather than playing the Bears, as much as we do enjoy the Bears, it has perhaps been insinuated that we always play the Bears for doubles, so maybe we should try something different. I think someone said that to me, and I was like, whoa. But it might also be largely true.
I think we were on a roll of playing them. I think we played them for like 2 or 3 doubles events in a row because we.
Yeah.
I think the first one we used them was the Nova that we won, and then Adepticon, or did we do Adepticon Nova Adepticon? I can't. Anyway,
I don't recall. It's been a lot of Bears. So this time we went a riding with the Riders of Theoden. I do not have our army list prepared for this because I am not that prepared today, but I do know what was in it. I had the primary force with Theoden, King of Rohan, on his horse with the shield, of course, and then we had Deowine, captain of the King's Knights, and between the two of them they had 11 Royal Guard with throwing spears, one of whom was carrying a banner. And in Sam's force, Sam had Eomer, 3rd Marshal of the Riddermark, and Dernhelm the Young, a rider of Rohan who joined Theoden's forces for the Battle of Pelennor Fields, and between those 2 heroes, Sam had 9 Royal Guard, one of whom had a banner, all of them with throwing spears. So not a whole lot of models, but a whole lot of horses.
Yeah, going for our tried and true tactic of being able to pounce on one army and hopefully fight 800 points against 400 points and have all the maneuverability that our little hearts could desire.
And just having the predictability of knowing who your primary leader is going into doubles can be really nice. So just picking a legendary legion.
Yeah, for sure.
A bit of a no-brainer for us.
Yeah. So again, and similar with the Bears, I think the last doubles is predominantly doubles happens at big conventions, right? Where it's like there's a doubles on one day and then the grand tournament. And I think we both end up prioritizing getting something done for the grand tournament and putting effort into that. and
Yep.
not necessarily into picking a really cool theme for doubles and going all out into doubles. Which I do think is a bit of a shame because the doubles, but also makes sense, right? So the doubles matters less, and you play less games with it. But I do think it'd be really cool to come up with like a super unique theme, or something that we're both excited for, and each paint half of the force, rather than what tends to happen is we either borrow one of Jake's armies or we play an army, like in this case one that you pretty much fully painted, though I think we had to borrow some of my helms.
Yeah, we did
Models,
some helm guys.
or an army that I've painted all of the models for. So it would be kind of cool to be like, we're going to play.
We should definitely do something with a little more thought into it this time. We kind of came up with this one on the night, so to speak. We really weren't sure what we were going to play. I was a little disappointed that given that the GT was 1,000 points, that the doubles wasn't 1,000 points. I understand why it's not. I've played 1,000 points doubles. It is a lot. But I would have been pretty stoked to get the Grand Army of the South out again, because Sam and I's the OG doubles army for the two of us, and we've never talked about it on the podcast.
So. Well, technically it was just Harad and Far Harad, right?
Fair enough.
Before the Grand Army of the South even came out. But yeah, we certainly played that quite a lot, and that would be fun. I think I kind of think if you don't want to do 1,000 points, that like do doubles, some like I don't know 325 points a player, or make it a 650 point game would be like
that could be cool.
Pretty cool, because then you're like really not going to be taking like you probably like maybe you could take the Riders of Theoden, but you're going to have Theoden and like one other hero, like you're not going to have a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, and if you go like, oh, we're going to play Helm Hammerhand, one of you gets Helm Hammerhand and like 4 guys.
Yeah.
Probably more than that.
But, significantly more.
The other one gets captains.
So. Yeah. Not for much longer, Ben. Soon there will be an army of Helm and and his sons and maybe daughter. Who's to say?
I know. I know. Great. So exciting.
But anyway, so that was sort of just my thoughts about doubles, and just pad this episode out a little bit because I imagine it's going to end up being only 3 games to talk about, and we're both talking about them. So it's not 6 games basically. So I imagine it'll be a slightly
Riders of Theoden are not renowned for drawing out long games.
Yeah. Well, Ben, do we want to get into it? Do we want to get into it, or should we
get on into it?
All right. So
scenario 1.
Yeah.
So we were playing against Zach and Tyler, who brought the Defenders of Erebor Legendary Legion.
Yep.
With Dane, Bard, Brand, and Thorin, and we ended up playing No Escape.
Yes, which if you're viewing...
Scenario number 1. Shall I give us a run through, Sam?
Sure.
I like to call this one, for those of you who are listening to the podcast, I like to call this one the Sandwich Deployment Zone. Basically, Team A's primary force deploys in the middle of the table. There's a 6-inch strip running down the middle of the table in which they deploy. Team B has a 6-inch strip that touches theirs running down the middle of the table. So the center 12 inches of the table are the primary deployment sides for both teams. And then the secondary forces for both teams come in 6 inches off the opposite side's board edge. So it goes Team A, Team B, Team A, Team B.
Just look it up.
Yeah, I've got that right.
Just look this one up. Don't rely on Ben's description.
Yeah, this is a terrible description of the sandwich deployment zone. And we have a game that lasts until the end of a turn in which one force has been reduced to 25% of its starting number. You score victory points for causing 1 or more wounds to the enemy leader, 3 if you kill them, 3 victory points if the enemy force is broken, 5 if they are broken and you are not, 1 victory point if you have at least 1 banner remaining, 2 victory points if you have a banner and they do not, and an additional 2 victory points if you kill the leader of the secondary force.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Well, before we get into this, I think it's worth saying that we know Zach and Tyler, and it was exciting to be paired against them. I believe Zach painted this army, and they looked absolutely awesome. It was super nice. If you want to hear sort of their side of this report, this battle, you can check out. I believe it's called What's Taters, a Smeagol podcast, which, as far as I'm aware, is on Spotify. I haven't seen it on Apple Podcasts, but if you have Spotify or I think SoundCloud as well, you can definitely check it out. It's a relatively new podcast, and they are a great group of guys. So definitely go and consider giving them a little listen, a little follow, subscribe. Share that love. And we were playing on one of my favorite boards that Nova has, which is a really cool Osgiliath board. Hilariously, I think this was the same board we played on first round last year.
Oh my god, it was.
So yeah, it's basically like kind of 4 different levels. So it's the table quarters are at different heights, and there are these big steps leading down or up to each level, and a smattering of ruins and some sewers kind of thing. It's a really cool board. However, this one, I do think this did cost us because, as everyone knows, horses can't walk upstairs, despite the fact we see Gandalf ride upstairs. And I've never encountered a horse that wouldn't be able to walk up these stairs. Anyway, so hilariously, in the rules for the game, there are rules that say horses can't move, like only move half upstairs. They don't lose any of their cavalry stuff, but they lose 50% of their movement, which I think we foolishly agreed to count these big. I mean, they're like 6 inches by like 8-inch long stairs. They're like, and we agreed to count them as stairs. And I'm sure the intention of this board is to not have those restrict the movement of cavalry. Basically, you can climb up the rest of it, but if you don't want to do climb, this would be the only way to move. And obviously, as a horse, you can't climb. So blah 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 blah. Anyway, long story short, that cost us the game. I think we might have lost it anyway, but that we definitely weren't winning.
Yeah, it was one of those things that didn't really think it through terribly well at the beginning of the game, and maybe would have been worth calling a TO over to be like, hey, obviously this is very swingy one way or the other if these are counting as stairs for horses. But we didn't do that. We decided just to go at it and have a good old game.
Yeah, I think to belabor this point a little bit more, the thing that sucks about it is it wasn't like we were one of our armies had horses and the other ones didn't. So it was like. Yeah. It was either really good for us for them to not count, and really shitty for them to not count, or it was really shitty for us for them to count as stairs, and really good for them to not count as stairs. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's the doubles. It doesn't matter as much, but it did end up meaning that the whole point of this army, which was to be quick and maneuverable and engage on our terms, just wasn't possible, because it wasn't even like you could ride away along the other side of the board and make them chase you. It was physically impossible for us to get away.
Yeah, I mean, you can't move from one quarter of the board to another quarter of the board without going on the stairs. Yeah. So, when I deployed Theoden and Daewine in the center of the board, it was like, we're going down one set of stairs or up the other set of stairs. Which was indeed unfortunate.
But enough about the terrain and stuff. Should we get into the game?
Yeah, let us do it. So I obviously deploy Theoden in the middle of the board. Tyler puts down Dane and Bard in the center of the board opposite Theoden, and Zach brings down Brand and Thorin Stonehelm behind Theoden, and of course Eomer and Dernhelm are riding up behind Dane and Bard, and we take turn 1 priority. Theoden's warband rides onto the steps of Doom. And I think I got some charges. I got some charges in, but was essentially going to get charged no matter what I did. So I got some charges and moved up the rest of my cavalry. And then King Dane and company countercharged. And I made sure to have at least one turn before catching Brand and Thorin in the ass. So I gave myself just a little bit of space from them. I didn't mark down any casualties or kills for round 1. But round 2 is where we really start to get into more of the game. We take the second turn priority, and we get a move off between Theoden and Bard. The move, of course, goes to Bard. And now Theoden's warband is well and truly bogged down on the steps, surrounded by dwarves. We get some heroic actions in the combat phase. Theoden calls a strike. I believe he was actually fighting against... Yeah, there he is. Fighting against King Dane on the steps. Dane defending the stairs, Theoden charging down the stairs. Walking his horse very carefully down the stairs. Wouldn't want to break Snowmane's ankles, would we now?
Yeah.
We get the strike off between Theoden and Dane. And Theoden wins the strike off. Dane loses a point of fate, but is unwounded. and 5 of Theoden's noble royal guard are brought low by the men of Dale and dwarves of Erebor. And we get some heroic combats from Brand and Thorin this turn as well.
I think at this point I've moved 20 inches off the backboard while thoroughly ignoring somebody trying to tell me specific parts of this river were also difficult or rough ground. I was like, nope, not playing that game. I have enough movement. I'm going to move around them. But I was like, dude, like, no, man. You're getting 50% of my movement on these steps. You're not taking any more from me. Damn it. But the unfortunate thing was, basically, I think I had like Aomer and a couple of the riders like at the foot of these steps, and they were still like 6 inches away from being able to charge. So like this, if you're viewing, you can see this picture. I'm basically like as close to it as I can, but it's like I think I still essentially, like, if Tyler had wanted to in the next turn, he could have just like moved everyone up by an inch, and I would not have been able to get any charges. As it is, I think I get like 1 in turn 3. But
yeah, you got to throw a whole bunch of throwing spears and do nothing with them.
Checks out. That's what throwing spears do. They're either they're deadly in one game for every tournament. The rest of the games there are pretty bad.
Yeah, that's psychological warfare.
Yes, that's true.
And a guarantee that your opponent will never choose Clash by Moonlight. That's the scenario. So we take the next turn priority. So far we've won all the priorities. It is availing us little, and I don't have a move off noted down here. I think we just took the move.
Nope, there is a move off. I don't note down who calls it, but the move goes to us, and we get some charging or something.
Daewine. Daewine calls the move. There it is. Okay. Daewine calls the move. Yep. So Theoden manages to leave the steps. He rides away. Basically maneuver his cavalry in such a way that the Royal Guard create an alleyway for Theoden to get off the steps. He goes onto a flank so that he's not going to get surrounded and trapped this turn. And hopefully lives to fight another day, because he is, of course, the key to this army. Sam charges up the steps, and we get into some more fights this turn. Aomer is now fighting King Dane at the foot of the steps.
Yep.
And we get another strike off there. Do you recall how that went, Sam?
Yeah, so Aomer and Dane both strike. I also have that Thorin called a combat.
Yeah.
So obviously that happens first, but the strike off goes to me, and I end up winning. So I win, or I don't know if I struck higher, or I think we both went to 10, or I went to 10 and he went to 9 or something. Either way, I managed to win the combat, and I spend another 2 might to kill Dane. I think I rolled like a 6 and a couple 5s, and just spent the last 2 of Aomer's might to guarantee kill Dane in one go. So that was quite satisfying. Aomer rode in and just cut an old man down.
Hit him from behind.
Yeah.
Look at him. He's looking the other way.
And what about, because I believe Thorin's combat was going to affect you.
So Thorin called heroic
I played
combat.
Zach and you played Tyler, or I played Tyler and you played Zach, essentially.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened. Once you rode to my rescue for a while, I was of course fighting both of them. Thorin calls a heroic combat, and Daewine gets a free heroic combat because Theoden is fighting. I believe Thorin's heroic combat goes first, and Thorin is actually able to get into Daewine and then kill Daewine this turn, because Thorin is of course 5'6", Daewine is only 5'5". Thorin brought friends. Daewine was all alone. So Daewine gets killed this turn, which, whatever. It's a shame. Sometimes he's great for me, though. Unfortunately, though, for me, Theoden was fighting against 2 warriors, I believe 1 Knight of Dale and 1 Erebor Dwarf. He lost the fight to the 2 warriors, and they dealt 2 wounds to him, and he failed his fate. Badly enough that he couldn't use his remaining point of might to save it, and Theoden was killed this turn, which was pretty catastrophic, as we also lost another 6 warriors this turn, which I believe means that I have about 1 warrior left on the table at this point.
Yeah, sort of not good. I think we can essentially speed through the rest of this.
There's only 1 turn left according to my score sheet.
Oh, I have that there were 2. But turn 4 goes to them. The move off, there's a move off. It also goes to them. Basically, our lines relock, and I don't have anything else of interest noted. I believe Aomer dies.
Aomer dies this turn. I lose my last warrior this turn. The game goes on for one more turn where we are broken in that final turn.
Yeah, so it ended up being a major loss, 5-10.
Yeah, 10 to 5 is what I have the score written down as.
Yeah, well, you always say your own score first, so 5-10.
Oh, 5 to 10 then.
Yeah. So a fun game. Zach and Tyler, always a pleasure to play. Unfortunately, it ended up being a bit less of a game. Well, they were able to pull off our grand strategy of fight one force down and then fight the other, and just having like these big bases on a relatively small section of board to be able to move. That was also halving our movement. Just ended up being like very brutal and didn't go overly well for us, but a fun game nonetheless. And Ben, if you're gonna,
always good to play against someone who's got a nicely painted army. I mean, the orange on the Dale guys is just it looks so good. I think they just really pop on the table.
And if you're going to lose a game, I think it's nice to lose the first one if you're a competent enough player that sort of puts you in a position to maybe be able to win the next two. So yeah, round one, major defeat for the Gallagher brothers. Turns out we should have played the Bears.
Should have played the Bears. All right, Sam. Onwards into round two, where we played this scenario 6,
Duel of Wits. If you are viewing, you can see the beautiful deployment map. If you are listening, I can either bring you a box or describe it to you. Just kidding, I'm going to describe it to you. It is table quarters where you get to deploy diagonally across from your teammate with a 12-inch, or I guess 24, a 12-inch radius circle cut out the middle, so you lose like the corners of your deployment. And we, of course, have a game that lasts until one force is being broken, and then on 1 or 2 it may suddenly end. And then we have some scoring. And weirdly, if this was a normal scenario, this would be special rules, but this is just not special rules before the scoring. At the start of the game, each player secretly writes down one enemy hero to be the target of their forces. This means that each team will have 2 targets. Players may not discuss with their partner which hero they have chosen for the duration of the game. It is a secret from all players except the player who wrote it down. So, you score 1 victory point. What?
I love that that's in there. How is it not going to be a secret from you? Of course it's not a secret from me. I wrote it down. It cracks me up that that's in there.
Well, maybe you're keeping it secret and keeping it safe. So you score 1 victory point for each of your team's targets that has been wounded. For each of your team's targets that has been slain, instead you score 2. If the same hero was chosen by both players, you score victory points twice for wounded or slain. You score 2 victory points for each of your opponent's targets that are within 6 inches of the center of the board at the end of the game. If the same hero was chosen by both players, you score twice as many as this. You score 1 victory point if the enemy force is broken. If the enemy force is broken and you are unbroken, instead you score 2. You score 1 victory point if you have at least 1 banner remaining at the end of the game. If you have at least 1 banner and your opponent has none, instead you score 2 victory points. So yes, a secret dueling of wits, and this is definitely the kind of scenario that an army like the Riders of Theoden are great at, because we basically both deployed on one side, so we could converge on one person in a corner. It's essentially what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And we were playing against Dan and Jackson. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I have Daniel and Jackson, but I think so. Yes.
And they were playing Mordor. Ben. Mordor. They had the Witch King with 3 might, 16 will, and 3 fate. They had.
He's got a Morannon Witch King and Shagrat in one army.
Yeah, but there's somebody else.
And then there's the Dark Marshal.
Oh, Dark Marshal. Yes, that was it. I just can't read my own writing. So Witch King and Shagrat, and then Dark Marshal and the Captain.
Yeah, my chicken scratch scroll says Dark Marsh.
Mine says Darmoosh. But yeah, there's definitely like 0K on that. Anyway, and I believe the Witch King's warband, or the Witch King sort of side of it, was Shagrat was the only model on foot, and then it was like a bunch of Warg Riders and Morgul Knights. which is
Yes, it was indeed. I did not take a ton of pictures of this game. I got a little bit excited early on and started taking pictures about halfway through. Who was your target, Sam?
I believe I chose Shagrat because
Yes,
Shagrat is
too.
terrible.
Yeah, I too chose Shagrat because I know that Sam thinks he's terrible, and he's also, like you said, the only foot model amongst a bunch of mounted guys. It sort of somehow seemed easier to pick him off.
Yeah, so I guess this is the other side of it, but basically, I sent my entire force towards the Witch King, Shagrat, and all of their riders. I think you sent most of your force off that way, but a token, as you can see in this picture, to get in the way of the sort of more infantry block line.
Yeah. I also knew how this game was going to go, which was that we were going to wipe one player off the table in a couple of turns, and I wanted his teammate to have something to do because it can kind of suck to not play the game. So I was like, here, these riders will A, slow you down, and B, make you feel like you're playing the game. Have some riders to kill.
Sure. So turn 1 went to them. I believe Mary took a black dart, which I wasn't thinking about, and obviously Mary was a target.
Darewine also ate a black dart. He lost his point of fate and a wound to the black dart. Black darts flying willy-nilly all over the place.
Yeah. I think we got some combat because Mary called a combat. AMS spent the point of might to kill a model. I think I decided I just needed to get some kills. I don't really have a huge amount written down on any of these.
Yeah, the first turn I don't have. I think I just have one kill marked down. I think we were just sort of like, let's just get some combat, get some contact. Maybe I don't think I actually got a lot of combat on the first turn.
No, I don't think you did.
We were playing on this cool Isengard board. We got Orthanc in the middle of, basically in the center of the board, and then the cranes and derricks and scaffolding of Isengard scattered around. And the location of one of the sets of scaffolding made it difficult for me to rush the Witch King's force. So some of my guys had to run around Orthanc, which meant Sam got there first.
Yeah, I think maybe the thing to do, Ben, is to rather than go turn by turn, is just sort of give an overview of what this game was like, and we can talk about some specific moments if it catches your eye.
Yeah, that sounds good.
But I think
this next turn might be one that we want to talk about. As this is the turn in which
this totally defeats the purpose of what I just said.
I know, but it's the turn we call death, Sam. It's the turn we call death. It's the big turn. And our opponents asked us that we scream death, that we were going to call death if we do it properly. Weren't these the guys that wanted us to yell it?
I know we yelled it, but I don't recall ever being asked because I was going to yell it regardless.
Yeah.
All right, take it away,
Ben.
So
we obviously called death this turn. I think the big thing to note down is that we got 10 kills between the two of us this turn, which is most of the Witch King's side of because his army was Morgul Knights and Warg Riders, so it was pretty much his entire warband was subsumed by free heroic combats from all our heroes at this point.
Yeah. There was also a move off in the beginning of it that went to them and enabled the Witch King to black dart and kill Mary.
That's true. That's right.
Do you now want to go through and summarize the game, or do you want to keep talking?
Yes, let's go through it and summarize the game, Sam.
All right. I mean, so essentially, what happened is the Witch King's warband lasted for longer than it potentially could have, and the Witch King finally dies on turn 6, and Shagrat dies on the turn before, turn 5. I think eventually we clue into the fact that Darewine is their target, is the other guy's target, so he spends quite a lot of the game hiding behind Orthanc, which was close to the middle of the board, and once we finally wrap up the Witch King's warband, we send I start as there are like a few models left and I can't get that many cavalry models in combat, I start sending them more towards this other force. Just in case the captain or something was your target, to try and box him out of the center. And I think there was a one opportunity for them to get a final black dart on Darewine, and they decided not to take it, or they waited for a turn, and then we were able to hide him successfully.
No, I think the Dark Marshal had like 4 will left.
Yeah.
And he obviously can't spend all of it. He spent 3 will on the black dart to get Daewon and just flubbed the roll. I don't know if it was the wound roll or the casting roll, but I have -3 will for black dart and a fail noted down. So I'd forgotten that it was their last ditch attempt to bring Daewon down.
Yeah.
He's obviously out of will and out of fate and down to 1 wound at this point.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and then once the Witch King and his warband was dead, it was kind of like the other guy had a bunch of Blackguard of Barad-dûr, which are tough to get through, but in a game where, we can now assume that one of their targets is dead and the other one, and like we basically know the other one, it becomes pretty easy to keep him alive. Obviously, he's wounded, which is not ideal, alive and close to the center. And I think, I don't know if they had any banners to start with, but we have 2, so it kind of makes it easy to keep one of them alive as well.
Yeah, and I think not really too much to say about this game from this point. I think we killed the Witch King's warband, made sure Daewon was near the middle of the board, but as far away from danger as possible, and when this one finally wrapped up, whether it was time or game conditions, we had a 9-4 victory. Yeah.
I mean, our opponents were great. It is the disadvantage of playing an all-mounted army, and basically the very solid doubles tactic of jumping on one side of your opponent's army and trying like cut it down, as it does end up being a like kind of less fun way to play, or can be less enjoyable for your opponents. And I think unfortunately that's a little bit down to the nature of the doubles scenarios. Like, it
is a little bit down to the nature of the doubles scenarios, which is why early on in the game, I think you asked me, Ben, why are you putting this Royal Guard over there? And I'm like, it's because I want my opponent to get to play the game.
Yeah, sure.
And I was also just at that point I was just so confident. I mean, it was early days, but I just felt I had a good feeling about this game. We definitely had the stronger list, and there was on the first board terrain was a problem. On this board, like just ride whatever you want.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so good game for us. Very nice opponents, and hopefully they had at least an okay time. Hopefully they had a great time.
I remember Shagrat performing better than both of us expected him to.
On paper he's great, but he just never does well for me, and I don't think he's like in this list he's probably fine because you're not relying on you don't have a shaman to give fury that doesn't hit Shagrat. He's not your only big hero to worry about. So but I think he also rolled the 6 so many turns in a row to win the fight, and I didn't get the 6, or I would get the 6 and then the fight would go to him, and it just was oh my god, I just need to kill him.
Yeah, like I said, we called death on turn 2, didn't kill Shagrat until turn 5, and the Witch King until turn 6, with us having 20 models over there, and then him having 12.
Yeah.
So they definitely stuck it out for a lot longer than they could have done. All right, Sam, onwards into the third and final game, I think.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
We were playing against Anthony and Mike, who brought Assault on Lothlorien.
Yes.
And they broke it up in the thematic way, which, good for them, but maybe not the most tactical way, where they had all of the orcs, so Musgar, an orc captain, and all of the orcs in one army, and then Ashrak, Durbers, all of the goblins in the other army, with a handful of bats, a couple spiders, and 2 or 3 warg marauders.
Yeah.
And now that I found the scenario page, we were playing scenario number 3, Take and Hold, which has got a central objective, and we've got 12-inch deployment zones coming out of the table corners, and once again you deploy in a table corner that is opposite from your partner. We've got a game that ends on a 1 or a 2 in the end of a turn in which one force has been broken. You score 3 victory points if your team has more models within 6 inches of the central objective marker than your opponent. 5 victory points if you've got at least 2 models and twice as many as your opponent, and 7 victory points if you've got at least 3 models and 3 times as many as your opponent within 6 inches of the center objective. 1 victory point for causing 1 or more wounds to the enemy leader, 2 if you kill them. 1 victory point if the enemy force is broken at the end of the game. 3 if the enemy force is broken and you are not. And interestingly enough, fantastically for us, we have a special rule that is a site of power. The area that both the forces are fighting over is an ancient place of great power that is said to be imbued with magic. Models within 6 inches of the objective marker gain a resistant to magic special rule and may reroll failed fate rolls.
Yeah. That is good for us, and I don't think I remembered it. I vaguely remember realized like, ooh, this is the one that's good, and I don't think I utilized that once.
I remember reminding you to roll the resistant to magic.
Okay.
Roll extra die. I don't think that every roll fate came up.
Yeah. This is also a legendary legion that's like pretty good for an army entirely armed with throwing spears to play against.
Yeah, because
I guess only against the orcs, because you get +1 to wound them. You don't get it against the goblins, which is dumb, but whatever.
Yeah. Orcs can't see in the night. They just fight in the they just fight it in the night. They just can't see in it.
That's true. That's true. All right. So, I think kind of similar. Go through it relatively quickly. And more sweeping overviews, perhaps. Turn 1, I have that goes to them.
Yep.
And the orc captain called a march, which I think makes sense. Basically, they didn't want the same thing to happen, or they were aware the same thing could happen, right? Which is one side just gets absolutely steamrolled, and then the other one eventually catches up. But we set it up to try and do that. We both went after the orc side of the army. This was
for the reason which you mentioned already, which is the throwing spears get +1 to wound against the orcs. Let's capitalize on that.
Yeah, this was a harder board. For us there were a bunch of like Osgiliath ruins that made for some pretty decent choke points, certainly on my side of the board. But still plenty of places we could ride through.
Yeah, and we had discussed with our opponents. Normally, on the Osgiliath ruins, right there, you've got a man-sized doorway which you can't fit a base through, an infantry base through, and you have a bigger doorway which a cavalry base can't fit through. Normally, when I'm playing on these boards, it's like if you can move through, if you could feasibly move through there, your base doesn't have to fit. Our opponent said they prefer to play it, so it's got to fit if it's going to go through there. So there were a lot more choke points than there would have normally been.
Yeah, which I admit I had a bit of a shitty response to, but that was after Stairgate 2024, and had a discussion with the opponent after the game, and he was like, "Oh, sorry, I was like, it's all good, dude. Sorry, I had a shitty response to it."
And it ended up working in our favor this time around, though, so that's okay. All right, Sam. Onwards into turn 2, where we get into some more action this turn. I believe we've got a bunch of throwing spears, and you got some actual combat. And we got a total of 5 kills this turn.
Yeah, Aomer had a wither thrown at him, which I was able to resist. So that was nice. I don't have any of the kills or anything written down. So
yeah, I that's the only turn I bothered to tally it for. Apparently, I've got none marked down for the rest of the game.
Which is why I think it's worth moving through these things quicker. So turn 3 also goes to them. We get a move off with Theoden and Musga. The move goes to them. We get another Wither, which Aomer resists again. We call Death this turn. And I think from my side, I was able to get Aomer into combat and then call the free combat and able to get him into Musga as well. And I killed Musga this turn.
Yeah,
which was
that was the big one. I mean, and I saw him because, like you said, Musgo won the move off, and I saw him leave that gap open, and I didn't have to say anything to you, but it was like, yep, Aomer's going to kill Musgo this turn. Here it comes.
Yeah.
And everyone called a free hero combat this turn. We obviously got a lot of kills, and put a hurting down on the orcs. And I think from there, at this point, the spiders and the bats are getting and the Warg Marauders are getting close to us. The Orc Warband is getting mopped up, and the Orc Captain, despite being fight 4 and fighting consistently 3 Royal Guard who are fight 5 when they charge him, the Orc Captain refused to die. I had him trapped all game, and he was on he was the new Gothmog model on his Warg, Orc Captain on the Warg, and he was I think absolute MVP for Anthony, who was piloting the Orcs.
Yeah.
Because that Orc Captain he won all of his fights. The fights that he lost, he just wouldn't die. He was a real thorn in our side. Fortunately, he was off on a flank and not near the central objective.
Yeah, I mean, and then I kind of think the rest of this game just ends up being like mop up in the middle while these goblins slowly come in, and I think we broke them pretty quickly, and then realized later that the standfast for one of the goblin characters only affects the spiders and stuff, but it didn't really matter.
That's right.
He a bunch of them. I think the turn after we realized that a bunch of them ran off, or we managed to kill a bunch of these goblins that were like slowly coming in.
Yeah, and if you look at this picture here, or if you're not on YouTube watching this video, the central objective is this little pink duck that's in the middle of this Osgiliath ruin, which is an L-shaped ruin, and the walls of it have doorways in it, which are not quite big enough to fit a 40mm base through. So the spiders, the bat swarms, and the warg marauders now can't come into the center of the board. They have to go all the way around the sides. So it just delayed them for more turns, and we were able to mop up the rest of the orcs and basically keep most of the goblin, the fast movers out of the center objectives. The ones that got close enough, like Sam said, ended up running away.
I think this one also continued going for like a decent number of turns after they were broken.
Yeah.
Because there was definitely like a couple turns in there where they might have won, or it certainly would have been much closer, just because they did have numbers in the middle, and because he was throwing in goblins into the central objective, and we just were cutting through them, which just took a little while. But had it ended on like the first possible turn, I think they would have had more models within them.
Yeah, and I do think too that it possibly could have been worth them acknowledging that, okay, the goblins aren't going to get there in time. Because what happened is the spiders, the bats, and the warg marauders rush up forwards, and now they're not within 6 inches of any heroes, so we're calling the moves. We're moving first. And the warg marauders are definitely scary, but if you can engage them with 2 Royal Guard, I'm fight 5, I've got 2 attacks, and a banner nearby, I've got good odds that I'm winning that fight against the warg marauders, and we were basically just able to shut them down for long enough that, by the time the game ended and the goblins were arriving, all the orcs were dead, and we had scads of Royal Guard defending doorways around the central objective.
Well, not actually defending doorways, just
we could have been defending
doorways. I don't think you can defend. Surely you can't defend a doorway on a horse.
Yep. Horses can defend barriers, and a doorway is just a barrier.
That's sillier than them moving upstairs.
Yeah,
Jeez, we need to put Jay on a horse. Let him figure it out. But yeah, so
horses don't fight in doorways, and they can go upstairs.
So this ended up being a major victory for us, 8-0.
Yep.
Mike and Anthony were super awesome opponents, really nice guys, and nice to get a win against the Assault on Lothlorien.
Mike and Anthony were great. They, you go to these events and you meet an opponent, and sometimes you're like, you were fun. I will, I'll probably wave to you if I see you again. And other times you're like, you were awesome. I'm going to track you down for the rest of this event and keep checking in with you. How the rest of your games are. And Anthony and I really hit it off. I was checking in with him throughout the whole GT. And then on our great extravagant drinking night, when we came back to the gaming hall, I ended up chatting with him for quite a while too. So
it was awesome, and nice to end the doubles on a win.
Yep.
So we ended up going 2-1. Not the best, obviously, we've ever done, but certainly not the worst either.
Pretty much our doubles average, I think.
Yep, I think that is accurate. So in a stunning Gondor Calls for Ale move of excellence, we don't know where we placed or who ended up winning, but there you have our reports from the front of the doubles games.
Yeah. We got to find something more fun to play next time, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I think just picking something and actually we're gonna play whatever it is. It could be just Tin Can Gondor, but actually making it a project and building the lists to be themed together and
Yeah. Apparently, I had a lot more pictures of this game than I thought I did. Look, we're done talking about this game, and I'm surely that's the last picture. There it is.
All right. Well, Ben, we should, of course, as this final slide slides in, we should talk about as we're putting our dice down. Those dice that we've put down, that's right, I have remembered at this very minute that we do in fact have a wonderful sponsor for this podcast, which is the Baron of Dice, Ben. And we can attribute some or all of our victories to rolling well, and the Baron of Dice certainly help with that. If you want some hand-swirled resin dice with no micro bubbles that are guaranteed to roll sixes at least some of the time, look no further than the Baron. And you can find a link in the description of wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast to go check out the wide, over 3,000 different styles of dice that he has on offer. And if you would like to get a little bit of a discount, you can use our promo code. That is, of course, capital G, capital C, capital A. So check out the Baron, get some sweet dice, help us out, help him out. It's a good old time.
3,000 different kinds of dice. That's a lot. I know you say this, and I hear these numbers every single episode, but I was just sitting here listening to you, sitting here thinking about, that's a lot of dice.
It's not a small number, and he's certainly adding more on a regular basis.
Certainly is. I also want to give a big shout out and a thank you to our Patreons. If you're interested in supporting the show, hop over to Patreon and buy us a beer. We really do appreciate it. You guys help keep the lights on here at Gondor Calls for Ale. So go check it out for some cool extra content and some sweet Gondor Calls for Ale dice.
Yeah. You keep the lights on, the action on, and the camera on, as some say. All right, Ben. So let's sort of wrap up doubles. Doubles for you at Adepticon 2024. Doubles for you, probably the last double.
Adepticon.
Nova, whatever. Probably the last doubles for you in this edition, and for me. How do you feel it went? How do you feel about doubles? You know. Just drag on this episode a little bit more so we can get close to that hour mark. Give me some of your thoughts.
Well, disappointing to have lost that first game
sure.
to the stairs. But, if you're going to lose a game to a terrain feature, it's nice to be playing against your friends when you do.
Yeah.
I think it's nice to see, that's the episodes, the edition is coming to an end, right? And we're going to get some new scenarios. And I would really love to see. I love doubles. It's really fun going to an event with a partner, having someone to cheer on with and commiserate with, and oh no, Sam's in trouble, gonna go bail him out. It's not just, oh no, captain that I'm controlling over there is in trouble. I'm I gotta go rescue my partner's player. Whatever. But I really hope that they take a look at those double scenarios and do something so that it doesn't always devolve into a 2v1.
Yeah. Sure.
The fact that you're always split up is, we've said it before, I'll say it again. It's a bummer because you're not next to your friend who you came to play with. But the fact that it often devolves into a 2 versus 1 is also a bummer. Yeah,
I do think it also potentially pushes you into cornholes you into a or whatever.
Style.
Yeah, into one of our. We need to take an army that one of our forces can be mostly mounted, because if we're both walking and we fight somebody who is quicker than us, it's going to be a slog to get there, and or the person who's just the walking half of the army ends up not playing as much as the game.
Yep.
But yeah. So I agree. I think some more double scenarios would be cool. I also think it would be cool to have double the number of them. Even if they don't get rid of these old ones, if they add 6 new ones, would be super cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, my favorite one is the one where you deploy together. It's a really fun double scenario.
Yeah.
It's not called Contest of Champions.
It's the one.
Whatever it's called.
Yeah, where you count kills.
It's a fun one.
Yeah.
I think this one went well. We decided to play the Riders of Theoden, obviously hoping to win all our games by being maneuverable. We lost our first one because we weren't maneuverable, and then it did exactly what we expected it to for the other 2 games, which was ride one player down into the ground and then have enough punch left to deal with the other player. Yeah, for sure. Definitely not a bad doubles list, despite our going 2-1. No.
Potentially not the most fun or interesting. I was thinking about these games getting ready to record earlier today, and I was like, I kind of would have been more fun to just see how many. Obviously we're restricted with the models we have, but see how many Riders of Rohan we can get, because that's one of the things I always complain about this army, right, is that it's supposed to be Theoden's the mass charge the Rohirrim at the Battle of Pelennor Fields, where he's got half as many spears as he'd hoped for, but is still like 12,000 or something. Like it's a substantial number of them, and the armies tend to be like very low model count, like not even like low even for all cavalry army kind of model counts.
Yeah.
So
I remember. I guess it's a weird one to write for, but I do remember looking at when I was writing the list, and essentially, the points value for the doubles, 400 points a player. It's essentially you take in each army, you take either all of your models are Royal Guard or all of them are Riders of Rohan, and you essentially get like 2 extra Riders of Rohan.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably more about the hero choices, right? Like, you can make a Rohan captain pretty dirt cheap, so if you did, like, Theoden, Eomer, and, like, a Rohan captain each, and just try and pile them. But you're right, I mean, that's the issue, right? Is that Royal Guard are, like, 2 points more than a Rider, so it, like, really doesn't make sense not to take the Riders. Or you just have to take the Riders without mass throwing spears. You're just like, yeah, they're just all bow and...
I mean, we left gambling behind. We could definitely have gone harder on the heroes. I think if you wanted to get more guys, you take out Eomer and throw in Elfhelm, or like you said, a captain, because Eomer's, I think that's really the only place we could have lost points.
Yeah, but...
Because even if you just go Theoden and his warband, I still don't think Theoden and 18 Royal Guard, I think, is less than 400 points.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. But, as I just said, it's about the fact that the Royal Guard are only 2 points more than the Riders, so it's kind of like for every, you have to drop a lot of Royal Guard and you only get one more. It's what, like 7 Royal Guard turn into 8 Riders? It's like not that much more.
And bows and doubles are pretty worthless.
Yeah, I mean, in this you just have to play like super avoidant, right? Yeah. It's like one of the things I thought would be a really cool doubles army would be to do like Rivendell Knights. One person gets Elrond and a bunch of Rivendell Knights, and the other person gets like the twins and a bunch of Rivendell Knights. Unfortunately, you can't do that because the like it's only if your forces includes Elrond do they not count towards bow limit, and so the second person's force wouldn't they would count towards bow limit. So
that's weird.
Yeah, I mean it's fine, it's whatever, but I also don't think it'd be very good or overly fun to play because the way you win with that is just like I'm gonna run around and shoot you forever. And
I mean the other one we were looking at was Azog and Bolg again, but at 400 points aside, the breakdown is weird.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. The thing that we've essentially come to is that we just need to make a more fun decision, like as far as what to bring. Just like bring something on theme, and I think that's gonna be an interesting conversation about once the new edition drops, and to see how the army creation has changed and whether that sort of forces more of a theme. But B, I imagine there'll be a little bit of a rebranding for Gondor Calls for Ale, because we like walk this weird line, right, of being like, come listen to us while we talk about all these tournaments we attend, but you more than me try to win them. But I like considered it. I think it was after not Adepticon. I think it was after Nova last year. I was like, man, maybe I should like really give it a go. And I was just like, no, I honestly think it's going to be more fun if I try less to win and just go for like really theme or like really fun stuff and stuff I'm excited for. And I certainly think that has been the case. And so I think perhaps, if we're not going to be there winning tournaments or telling you what the newest cheese is, or if Ben's trying to do that and I'm yelling at him for being cheesy, we need to sort of pick a lane and go with it.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this new edition. Not to like get too into this right now because end of the episode, I can talk about the new edition bit. But I'm just so excited to see what's coming.
Yeah.
To the point where it's almost difficult to work on any hobby projects because I just don't know what I'm going to get excited about.
Yeah.
I'm excited about the new models that we just saw.
Yeah.
I don't have them. I want to paint them.
Yeah. I'm painting up a lot of terrain, partially because that's an easy, fun thing to do, but partially because it's like, I'm whatever I start on, as soon as that box comes out, I'm going to immediately like swap into doing that. So yes, lots of exciting stuff for both Gondor Calls for Ale and the Middle-earth strategy battle game in the future. Otherwise, to say it was an excellently run event as always. Devon puts on a great event. Nova was a great convention. All our opponents were lovely. There was not a single person I would not voluntarily play again.
That said, Sam, Devon does run a great event. Don't get me wrong. It's a little disappointing that the doubles at Nova is first place, second place, third place. There's no best painted. There's no favorite army. There's no best display. So Adepticon I think does that a little bit better. Just in the display boards for doubles at Adepticon show that because they went nuts last year.
Yep. No, that is fair. I was just trying to end it on a very positive spin. So way to be a Debbie Downer.
Well, Sam, before we end this episode, should we perhaps talk about what we can foresee in the future?
Sure.
Upcoming episodes. Where will you be next?
Well, I believe you will be somewhere next, because this episode will come out on like the 4th of October. So why don't you tell us where you'll be next, and we can do it in semi-chronological order.
Well, Sam, I shall be going once more into the Paths of the Dead on October 19th and 20th. We've got 700 points, 5 days, 2 rounds in Massachusetts at ArmorCon. Once more into the Paths of the Dead. It's hosted by Alex. Alex runs a great event. It's fun. It's a fun convention to go to. It's also cool because the last 2 times that I've gone, Lord of the Rings players have been in the majority. Nice. There'll be like 4 40k players and 12 Lord of the Rings players, and we're like, yeah, Lord of the Rings. So it's fun. It's fun to go to an event where it's like Lord of the Rings, and it's starting to be sort of where the vendors are kind of gearing towards us a little bit more.
Nice.
So definitely in the last year there were people who were selling stuff that was geared towards Lord of the Rings players, which is great. It's fun to see taking over the event.
Awesome. Yeah, I was disappointed to not be able to make that one, and partially I'm not going to get any of the armies I'd be excited to play painted in time, so I'm not going to rush and try and do that. But one year I will make it. All right, well, moving on to where I will be, Ben. I will be on Saturday, November 2nd at the Battle for Lancaster Fields 3, which is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I believe it's a 750-point event. It is a 750-point event with the option to bring 2 lists, one good, one evil. However, rather than being your standard good versus evil, it is after the scenario is announced. There is no veto, which I thoroughly enjoy. You get to pick which of your armies you want to play in it. So that's kind of cool. A cool way.
It is cool. I think you mentioned this before. It's effectively you can still min-match your army.
Yes.
You just have to min-match 2 different army lists, and then you get to pick which one. But I think it's just a fun, different way of fixing, like the veto system fixes a problem, which is that you can have a non-game.
Sure.
Based on mission and matchups, and it sort of fixes that in a different way, and I think it's really cool.
No, I'm excited to try it. It also lets you be like, let's say I play Helm and I don't know, whatever, X other Pits of Dogaldor, because I really want free heroic combats as my theme, and I run up against somebody who's playing Angmar with a bunch of magic. I will be like, well, whatever the scenario is, I'm going to play Pits of Dogaldor because I get resistant to magic across my entire army, and I'd rather run that into Angmar than Helm.
Or you can be like, well, you look like a stronger player than me, and this scenario sucks for both my armies. I have a fun list and a competitive list. I shall play the fun one.
Yeah. Well, all my lists are fun. That's what I've just been saying, Ben. And then after that, on December 7th, I will be attending Shorehammer, which is a 554-point event in Ocean City, Maryland. No named heroes, which is super cool. I say I will be attending that. I already have my ticket, but there is a possibility that if the new edition is released by then and it's using the old edition, that I will just be not overly interested in doing that, and so may change my mind. But probably not. I will probably be there.
Just show up with your new edition rulebook and look confused.
Yeah.
I have a low intelligence score on my new edition rulebook stats as Ben Gallagher, or Sam Gallagher, sorry.
I see what you did there.
Confused.
Very good. All right, Ben. Well, with that is where you can find us. That is what you have to look forward to us ramble on and on about. We have just about made the hour. This was potentially a bit of an odd episode. If you're viewing or listening and are still here, thank you very much for putting up with us. Unless there's anything else you want to say, Ben?
No, the rambling has gone ever on and on, but now it is done.
It is. We will be back in your ears and potentially your eyes in 2 short weeks. Thank you for listening to Gondor Calls for Ale. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. We, at Gondor Calls for Ale, are officially sponsored by the Baron of Dice, the producer of premium wargaming dice. These beautifully hand-swirled resin dice have no micro bubbles and are therefore perfectly balanced. With over 3,000 variants and unique designs, nearly every tabletop gaming system is represented. So check out the description of this episode for a link and a discount code. Go buy yourself some new dice and let the good times roll. We at Gondor Calls for Ale are not associated with Games Workshop, New Line Cinema, or the Tolkien Estate. We hope we have not misrepresented or offended anyone. These recordings are strictly recollections of games we've played and are not commentaries on the character or competence of our opponents. They are intended purely for entertainment, and we hope they will be taken as such. You can find us on Patreon, see the link in the description. Supporting Gondor Calls for Ale there helps us continue to produce these episodes. You can find us on Instagram at Gondor_calls_for_ale. Feel free to send us a message there. Or on Facebook as Gondor Calls for Ale, another great place to send us a message. Or you can send us an email at gondorcallsforale@gmail.com. As Boromir, Captain of the White Tower, once said, remember today, listener, today this episode was good.